Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for joining us. Today's topic is Coffee with a Psychic. This will be an ongoing series where we are sharing our personal experiences and stories and hope that you get some enjoyment out of it. Joining me again today is Jill and Michelle. Hello, Michelle. Hello, Jill.
Hi, Ron.
Hello, Ron.
Okay, who wants to start?
I can start this off. Back in 2010, before I met Ron, I was living with my brother at the time. We were renting an apartment, and I was going through a lot of change in my life. But what was interesting was that at night, especially, I was starting to hear voices, so becoming somewhat clairaudient for that time period. What was cool about this is I actually had a friend living with us at the time, and we were sharing a bedroom. So it did validate some of these experiences that I was having. We were in the practice of saying, I love you, before we'd fall asleep at night. And so one night I did as I always did, and I said, I love you. And before she could answer, someone whispered back. They said, I love you too. But it was in a whisper. And right away she goes, that wasn't me. And I said, I figured that. And she was pretty freaked out by it, but I figured, if a spirit is saying I love you, it's probably not a lower vibrational one, probably doesn't mean any harm. But it really got me thinking about who the spirit was that was around me. And there was a lot of this kind of activity going on at that time in my life. And another night, when we were still living together, we were going to sleep again, and I heard 3 times someone whisper my name. And I ignored it, actually, because I didn't really want to think about who or what it was. And she goes, that wasn't me. I said, nice. Yeah. I said, I know. And I said, I was actually trying to fall asleep despite hearing my name called and whispered. In the end, I wasn't really scared of it, and especially looking back, I know that it was a benevolent spirit. But it was just at a really pivotal point in my life.
When we are going through or experiencing such things, phenomena, if you want to call it that, is when our energy levels are at their lowest and fear starts to set in of the unknown, a lot of anxiety, and it could be just for the day or it could be for months. It depends on the transition that you're personally going through. But it will spur on events like Jill was mentioning, where you're more open to hearing things, seeing things, experiencing things that you normally wouldn't do when you're busy enjoying life. What about you, Michelle? Do you have anything to share?
I'm thinking of a couple of events that happened to me when I was growing up. Once in about grade school, we were looking at houses, hoping to change the one that we were in when we were living in Massachusetts. And we went through this one house, and it was kind of neat, and it had some closed off rooms and so forth. And as my sisters and I went past this one room, we saw this little old lady sitting in a chair, and she looked maybe a little crabby. So we went, okay, we're not going in there. So we just kept touring the house and stuff. And then later on we went back there, and the room was completely empty. And so I finally talked to my sisters later on. Yeah, did you see the old lady? Yeah, okay. One of many things that happens over the years. And the other one was we were in college, and we stayed at a friend's house. And anecdotally, she just kind of said, oh, yeah, if you hear creaking on the floor, that's just Grandma walking around. She's checking on you. And Grandma had passed years before. And I'm sitting there thinking, oh, goody. Yeah, I'm going to sleep well tonight. Sure enough, partway through the night, and we're all in bed, you could hear the floor creaking. And it was very rhythmic. So it was not just, the house settling because it was early spring. And you could actually feel whoever it was come up to your head and kind of check you out. It was unsettling. It wasn't totally scary, but it was definitely unsettling because somebody was suddenly in your space and you're like, oh, goody. I hope they like me and don't throw me out of the house,
Well, I had an experience quite a few years ago now. When I was working as a bartender, I would get home late at night, usually after a couple of drinks with the other bartenders after closing. And I had gotten home. I was working a full-time job besides bartending, and I was pretty exhausted. And it was on a Saturday evening, so it was really late, early in the morning, like 3 o'clock in the morning. And I was hungry, but I decided I was just going to go to bed. I was so exhausted. And after I cleaned up and I laid down in bed, I felt something around my feet, as if somebody was putting their hands on the mattress, and I could feel the mattress moving or being pushed down around my feet and then up around the side of the left side of me. I was flat on my back, and I thought, oh, how am I going to sleep now? And I had no idea that I might have brought something home with me.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was a yucky feeling, but I finally did doze off. Like I said, I had a few drinks in me, but I dozed off, was able to fall asleep. And then all of a sudden, I don't know how much time had passed because I really didn't look at the clock when I woke up, but I woke up in a frantic because I felt two hands around my ankles, and it was pulling me, literally trying to pull my body weight down to the end of the bed. And I freaked out so much that I jumped out of bed. The first thing I thought about was, Jesus, please save me. And I ran out of the room, turned on the lights, all the lights in my home, and opened the front door to make sure that nobody was in my home. That's how real it felt. But it really gave me the eerijeebies. And after that, since then, though, I realized that there was I had purchased a bedroom set from a used bedroom set from a store in St. Paul over on Rice Street, and the energy that was with the bed and the frame itself at the time was haunted from the previous owner who had taken his own life, and a series of dreams had started to set in with me where this gentleman was taking me through the time that he spent in Vietnam up until the time that he had taken his life. So every night I knew the dream would start where it left off the night before, and what he saw and what he experienced in his time that he spent over in Vietnam was very emotional for me, and it was also very shocking that such a young man, I believe he was between 17 and 18 at the time, that someone at that age would have to experience such tragedy and loss of life and having to actually kill another human being. But I saw this went on for a couple of weeks actually, and it was so draining on me that I actually ended up calling into work sick a couple of days because I wasn't getting enough sleep. I was so entranced in this gentleman's past life. Once I identified that, he actually did give me his name, and I'm not going to repeat that name because he has since moved on and I don't want to call him back in. But very nice gentleman, was no longer poised to frighten me in any way, but he did want to catch my attention. Since then, I haven't had any more dreams. I did ask him to cross over. I've shared that story with several people since then, but that's the one that stands out mostly for me. That was a life changer.
That's a good one, though. I like that one. I was watching Michelle's facial expressions. Speaking of which, Michelle, that would be a good point as far as when you were talking about before.
Secondhand stuff?
Yeah, secondhand stuff, but like the one something about the immigrant that came with their luggage.
Oh, God, yeah. I got a few of those from the auction house. One of them was there was a statue. This was the time, probably about the 90s, when it was the big thing when the cemeteries around St. Paul were getting rid of the urns and things. Well, that became big business, and they put it on the auctions and stuff, and this was before eBay came up and kind of, ruined most of the auctions. And in between then some of the people started to take some of the statuary. And this was a statue of a small child. And I looked at it and I went, that just seems odd. So my boss's wife wanted that for her garden. And all of a sudden I saw this little kid in knickers running around with a little, cap on. And just, he wouldn't show me his face because he was busy running around. but I knew he had died of a fever, so it was probably one of the flu fevers, the epidemics that went through there, the fevers. And my boss's wife said, I want that. And I said, I really wouldn't give that to you. I said, it's haunted. I just wouldn't. Thank God she kind of thought I was a little nuts, but she didn't buy it. And another one was I was looking at this really nice immigrant trunk. Unfortunately, the immigrant was still sitting on it. He had long since passed. And I thought, there is no way on God's green earth I am buying that. And the other one was there was a chair from about the 50s, so it was a mod 50s chair. And I had gone and cleaned the place. And I looked over, and there was this lady in a pencil skirt and a blouse and one of those beehive hairdos sitting in the chair, kind of wiggling her butt, going, oh, this is kind of fun. This is cool. And I went, yeah, I'm not buying that one either. So, I mean, it's just a lot of stuff that used to come through the auction. Some of it, thank God, not so negative. Some of it kind of positive. The most positive one was we got in some stuff from a Greek Orthodox rectory. And let me tell you, that stuff was so filled with, I wouldn't say holiness, but goodness and stuff. My mind was like literally flying for about a week. I mean, it was a good feeling, but wow.
So the house that I grew up in, I lived next door to one of my friends, and she lived in a farmhouse built in 1865. Needless to say, there was a lot of activity there. Her parents were uber Christian, very conservative Christian, didn't believe in anything outside of the Bible, and everything spiritual was, evil in their mind. So we didn't talk about it with them, but we knew there was activity. And several times we had experiences, but one in particular, we were in her bedroom. We had opened the closet door, and she was curious about this one wall in her closet because it was like hollow sounding. It wasn't solid. And so we kept knocking on it, just childhood curiosity, I guess. And this was broad daylight, and I went to knock on it, and I knocked once, and I received a knock back and then a double knock. And right away we thought, we got to go see if there's someone on the other side just, toying with us. So we did. We ran around the other side as fast as we could. No one there on the other side, the room on the other side. We didn't say anything to either one of our families, obviously, because it was kind of a don't talk about that mindset. But that was just one experience we had. But there was another one I want to bring up real quick. We were built this kind of partial snow fort one night in our yard, in my family's yard. And we were looking up at our house, and this was around dusk. And there was this light on in one of the upper rooms. And what was strange about it was we kept seeing this form in this lit room, but the form was changing. And so our impression was, because we counted, and it was just cycling through, was that the house was showing us the different spirits that were in there. And I think we counted at least 9 of them. Yes. And you could make out, even though it was like a silhouette type figure, you could kind of make out like, oh, that's a soldier, that's a woman. And it was really interesting. They just kept cycling through, and as we were counting and kind of figuring out who was who, didn't pick up on names or anything like that. But that was kind of like one thing that really stood out to me, and I know that friend would remember it to this day if I talked to her about it. But it was just really fascinating.
There's one that I remember, and I'd like to share with the listeners that all 3 of us were involved in. We were called out to do a house cleansing in South Minneapolis, and it was right along the I-94 corridor between Minneapolis and St. Paul. And it was an old apartment structure, and this might be the reason why we don't do apartments anymore. But we went in there, and this gentleman had done some recording, had caught some orbs through his camera, through video, and then some sounds that were being made by the spirits that were inside the building. It wasn't just, I don't believe, in his apartment, but this whole building. It used to be a hotel, by the way, and so it's got a lot of old energy that is hanging around there. Anyway, so we probably spent about an hour and a half, 2 hours there. All of us were exhausted because we were just sending the different entities that were there to the light, those that were willing to go to the light, or send them on their way. away from the property. And we felt we did a very good job, and he felt the energy and the atmosphere very light about it, and that he was going to stay in contact with us. After we got home and started looking at the pictures that he had shared with us from his camera, we realized that the outline of the fireplace that was no longer in use, it was just an outline of a fireplace and the mantle embedded into the wall of the living room. There was little tiny squares, what would appear like glass, almost mirror-like squares, circling the hearth of the fireplace. And as we zoomed into the fireplace, each one of these squares had a different head and shoulder shot, a bust image of someone deceased. And it blew us away. And we just sat there. I think we counted at least 30 or 40 different souls that were captured by the camera and that are residing in these little squares around the hearth of that fireplace. That was really interesting, entertaining, and scary all at once.
Oh, yes.
If you have any questions about this broadcast or any others, or topic suggestions, or you want to share your paranormal experiences with us, please email us at contact@karmikchannels.org. We very much look forward to hearing from you. Thank you.